I saw
cheering
her
him on?
last night when he was speaking and she was standing behind him. There was one point where I almost saw her cringe. Like, it was like, oh, moving to where she needed to go. And she's got to know. She's got to have eyes.
The dust has just about settled after a somewhat extraordinary presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. The battle, which took place overnight, lacked the combative punch we were used to in the run-up to the 2020 vote. But in the end, it seems Trump's bid to return to the White House just got that little bit stronger. At times, the incumbent was struggling to remain coherent.
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Even before this debate, many were asking if Biden could cope with another 4 years in power. He would be 86 at the end of another term. Let's cross now to Johanna Maska, who's a former White House director of press advance under President Barack Obama. Good afternoon to you, Johanna.
Good afternoon.
Well, how big a crisis is this for the Democrats after last night?
Look, I worked with President Biden when I worked with President Obama. He was our vice president. At that time, he had been in office for a very long time. Last night was so embarrassing to us in America because we had one candidate, the Republican candidate, on stage saying that America, which is the greatest country in the world, was a failing nation. And, that couldn't track more with with all of the people who are trying to get to America because America is the greatest nation in the world. And we had the other candidate, President Biden, my former, boss's vice president, failing to put words together. So, I came out during the debate and I said, I'm sorry, but we need a new candidate.
Right.
Americans deserve a better candidate than, someone who can't put words together and a choice that isn't a convicted felon. It could happen. And so I disagree with some of the options that we were just discussing. I know that there are fantastic options in the Democratic bench, many of whom, are out there as surrogates for President Biden. They've been sitting on the sidelines, but we've got an excellent minority leader right now in Hakeem Jeffries, who is in the line of succession, who would be a fantastic presidential candidate.
Right. Well, you've gone for that. I mean, how do you do that? How do you bring this about now? Because it needs Biden to step down, doesn't it?
It would need Biden to not only step down, but appoint a successor. And look, Democrats, it's too bad to me that Republicans can't say the same about their candidate because their candidate took our nuclear secrets to Mar-a-Lago and tried to overthrow, the election and led his supporters to the Capitol. But we can. The Democrats, I pride ourselves, especially the Obama Democrats. We stood against Hillary Clinton when we didn't think she was the right candidate. And many of us have been texting this morning saying, you guys, this doesn't work. Biden would have to gracefully step aside and he would have to give his endorsement to someone.
What if he doesn't?
Is a different word than I would use.
Okay.
It would give his endorsement because, the other thing that we've been voting on in these primaries is our delegates that we're sending to the convention. Most of the time, people don't look at the other candidates we're looking at, but the delegates to the convention would be the ones who could vote on a different candidate.
But if he doesn't do that, can the issue be forced at all?
So, look, forced, probably not. Could Joe Biden stay there and just take the position that he's not going to leave? I suspect he could. The question is how many Democrats are going to stand there and say this is okay. Gavin Newsom he's out there saying, all of us Democrats who are saying that there are problems are, a problem and are in and of ourselves, right? He's saying that we are not being helpful. I couldn't disagree with Governor Newsom more. Governor Newsom, of course, Kimberly Guilfoyle's ex. Kimberly Guilfoyle is marrying Don Jr. I live in California now, and I've seen the way that he's managed the state. I do not think that he should be the person running for president. And I do not think that those of us who are expressing our deep concern with this candidate are the problem. I think the fact that we've just allowed this, anointment of Joe Biden is the problem. We still have time. If the Republicans took 15 tries to get a Speaker of the House, we can take one more try to get a presidential candidate who can string some words together.
But can
I
any
love
of,
Joe Biden.
a lot of the contenders are not sort of household names the world over, not necessarily
They
household
don't
names
need to be.
okay, but can they beat Donald Trump?
Yes. Yes.
Explain how.
Americans are looking for someone to give a positive vision for America. Those of us who are looking at the problems of artificial intelligence, that are looking at the problems of, the opportunities with quantum computing, but the real problems with social media, with all of these new technologies, there is such an appetite by younger voters for someone to speak to that. And there are candidates who speak to this. Wes Moore is an excellent candidate. He's currently the governor of Maryland. Many in the Democratic Party have looked at him for the leadership he's going to bring about. He actually worked in the Bush administration as a fellow in the aftermath of 9/11. He was in the military. He has worked with Republicans in the aftermath of their bridge crisis in Maryland. He has been an excellent leader. If we give someone like that the stage, you don't need much to beat a convicted felon. You need a candidate who's going to give people a positive vision for America. Wes Moore would be an excellent candidate. Again, Hakeem Jeffries has now been tested as our minority leader, and he has proven time and time again that he can step into that position and
Right.
have great credibility. Gretchen
So
Whitmer is another person who could win Michigan, which is important. That's the other thing that people are talking about with Gavin Newsom. Look, he's California. We need to win the Rust Belt. We need to win the states that I grew up in. I grew up in Galesburg, Illinois, where we lost Maytag. We need a candidate who can speak to that, and we have them.
Okay, so who needs to be whispering in Biden's ear at the moment? Who's going to persuade him to step down in the way that you
Jill
anticipate?
Biden.
And you think Jill? Do you think Jill would do that when you saw her last night?
When I saw
cheering
her
him on?
last night, when he was speaking and she was standing behind him, there was one point where I almost saw her cringe. Like, it was like, moving to where she needed to go. And she's got to know. She's got to have eyes
And
like
will
the rest of
people
us.
be on the phone to Jill saying you've got to do it now?
I can't imagine that Mrs. Obama and that Barack Obama are going to think this is okay. I just, I know them. I know all of our people are texting this morning and saying this is not okay.
Mm.
I just can't imagine. Again, I have so many problems with how the Republicans are handling their side and the fact that they've got someone who tried to overthrow our democracy, but democracy is too critical. We are the world's leader of democracy. We are hosting NATO in just 2 weeks, right after you get a new leader. We have to right now at this critical moment come to our senses and realize that this is not okay. I love Joe Biden. I want him to be able to go out with the grace that he deserves for a lifetime of service, like I thought Nancy Pelosi deserved. We need a new leader,
Right.
and there are going to be a lot of Democrats whispering in the Biden's ears.
And you just mentioned a name there that comes up a lot, Michelle Obama. I know she's ruled it out, but wouldn't the Democrats back her like a flash if they could persuade her to stand at this crisis hour?
I know Michelle Obama very well. We rode in minivans in Iowa. I adore her. She does not want the job. And for good reason. She has seen the job up close. There are people she knows who want the job, who are excellent candidates. She would be out on the road for them. I do not think that our only option is Mrs. Obama. And that's part of the problem, right? We give all the oxygen to the wrong people. Sometimes, again, Mrs. Obama is wonderful. Her oxygen hasn't even been about politics. It's, about how society, it's about other things. Hakeem Jeffries is a fantastic candidate who's been out there talking about what we need in our future. He would be a fantastic candidate who Mrs. Obama could rally around.
Okay.
But this notion that Mrs. Obama is going to come in and save the day, she probably will in some way, but it's not going to be because she's the candidate.
Well, that's fascinating. Final thought. I mean, do you think the day can be saved? Because you've given a very coherent argument as to why Biden needs to step aside. Do you think, in your heart of hearts, that's going to happen, or are you blundering into what Frank Luntz later on the show? I spoke to him just before we came on air. He said it's a suicide mission.
Those are the options, right? It's a suicide mission if we don't change our course. I believe in America. I believe in the Democrats. I have worked with them closely. And I believe that our party, we believe that change is possible and change sometimes we need.
Johanna Maska, pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much for joining us. The former White House Director of Press Advance under President Barack Obama there.